When I came to America, I felt like God was not just. I felt like even though the Bible says God so loved the world, I didn't matter, that I wasn't part of the world that God loved. I felt like when the Bible says that God never showed favoritism, that somehow God showed favoritism, because coming from the Congo is one of the richest country in natural resources. It has about 24 trillion in raw material. And those materials such as cotton and cobalt are the ones that we use to make cell phones. 80% of that comes from the Congo. In other words, if you have a cell phone, if you have a tablet, if you have a battery in a car, 80% of that, there is 80% chances that it came from the Congo. And so a country that has all that, yet the UN has ranked it to be the last country, the poorest country in the world.
I'm Tom Stokel, and my wife Nancy and I formed Medical Ministries International back in 1998. We formed it because we had taken trips overseas and had seen the great need that is there overseas. And having worked in the medical field here in the United States, we knew the great excess that we have here. So MMI was formed to become a conduit between the great excess we have here in the States, to pass it through us, let us see what it is and make sure it's the right thing, and then send it overseas to places that desperately need medical equipment and supplies. So we've been doing this now for about 20 years, and during that time, we have taken 6 trips to the Democratic Republic of the Congo. A person here in Fresno asked us if we would go on the first trip. In fact, he talked to us a lot about, can you please come to my country and just look? And so we did. And we looked and we saw what they don't have in the Congo. We went to both hospitals in large cities and out in the field, out in the bush, and we saw that their shelves were empty. These were perfectly talented physicians and nurses who were working with whatever they had to work with. And if they didn't have what we would say is, oh, this is the only supply we can have, they worked with what they had. And they reused things that we would never reuse because that's all they had. So that just increased our burden for the Congo and for the Congolese people, because if we could just give them the equipment and the supplies that they need to work better in that environment, then more people would be able to live. It would totally change the level of health in some areas. So that's what we've been doing. And the 6 trips there, we have worked out in the bush, in Kafumba and Malela, out of Kikwit. We have worked in Kinshasa.
And so that's where I came from. When I was growing up, Mobutu, a dictator, was the president for 32 years. And he had his name all over the place. And what Mobutu did is that he showed to us that being a leader means taking care of yourself. And so all we've seen was his name everywhere. He was the one that had all the money when 80% of people in the Congo do not have employment. That's the part of my story. Growing up and being part of that 80%. Yet everyone, if you go to the Congo today, every young man wants to be president. But how many presidents can it be? When you end up with 80% unemployment, people like my parents suffered. My dad is a math professor. My mom is a nurse. They worked hard their whole life. They set an example for us to put God first, to work as hard as they can, and to pursue to be a blessing to someone. But yet, unfortunately for them, they did not have the ability to have the kind of lifestyle that they deserve. We were living in a very small house with 3-bedroom and with no doors in any of the rooms. And I remember the boys' room was built with used roofing material. And when it was raining, it was just like you were outside. We had to walk out, get out of that room and go to another room, put some buckets to capture the water and just sleep on the floor. That's the kind of place that I came from. And yet I remember my parents in this poverty still serving God with everything they had, worrying about everybody in the neighborhood. We had people living in our place, people that were borderline crazy, kicked out and rejected by their own family, but yet my parents took care of them. I remember my mom would go and visit people that were sick to pray with them, not only to pray with them, but give them medication or take them to the hospital or give them some kind of diagnostic so that they will know what they're dealing with. 80% of the people in this country can't afford to go to big hospitals. And so I've seen these parents, my parents serving this much, and yet having this life that was broken. And then I came to this country and I visited all kinds of churches, and all those churches were full of people worshiping God, singing songs day in and day out. And yet that was the only 2 hours that really served God. After that, they spend the whole week just taking care of their families, taking care of themselves. And yet they were blessed beyond description in this country. And that really hurt me so much that I questioned God in so many ways and everything that I knew about God. I remember calling my mom, telling my mom, don't worry about us. We're here. We can actually go to school full-time and work full-time. And I promise you that I will build you a mansion. My mom just laughed and she said, Fredy, first off, are you okay? You talking about work and school in the same sentence? You were just a hard-headed kid who didn't want to listen to anything, but are you really okay talking about these things? And secondly, son, I just want to let you know, we didn't do this for you to take care of us. We wanted to set an example for you to know how to serve God where you are. And so my mom told me, listen, you are blessed to be where you are. We ran our race, and if I was to die today, I'll be happy. Go and serve God. Find somewhere where you can impact lives, because you are blessed beyond description. I didn't believe in that until I worked at the jail. It was the hardest time of my life because I was still learning this new language, English. And I was going to school full-time and working full-time. And yet working with the inmate, these guys laughed at me because I couldn't speak the language. But when I got to know them, I heard their stories and it broke my heart. Their stories were such that most of them didn't have a role model. They didn't have a father in their home. They didn't have someone that cared for them to point them to the right direction. And yet I was complaining to be in a country like the Congo, and I was blessed with parents that loved me, cared for me, and taught me everything that I needed to know. You might say to yourself, that's your story, Fredy, but that's not my story. But let me tell you that you are also blessed beyond description, because you are who you are today because of the environment that you were a part of. Human beings are a product of their society. It's because of the parent that you had that you think the way you think, that you value work, that you value everything that you do, and that you value God. But who put you in that family? Who put you in this country that gave you all the opportunities? Nobody but God. God saw fit to place you in this family, in this country, so that you can become the person that you are. Not so that you can just take care of yourself, but so that you can take care of other people, so that you can take care of those that are in need. Otherwise, God will become unjust because He has blessed you with things that He has not given to others. Yet the only reason why He gave you all that you have is so that you can be a blessing to someone. When you read the Bible, all you see is God literally blessing people to be a blessing. Jesus Christ training the disciples so that they can do greater things in impacting the world, bringing the gospel. Jesus Christ Himself, not just sharing the gospel, not just sharing His good news, but also impacting people by touching them physically, healing the sick, feeding the hungry. And so when I've seen that and I realized how blessed I was determined to move forward with two visions. One of them was to knock on every single door in these big and beautiful churches and get to engage with the people in the church and to invite them to have the time to spend with kids that are in elementary school that may end up in jail because of the lack of role models. I thought that if we as the church can reach out to those kids before they end up in jail, we can save their lives. My mom always told me that unfortunately the church became more reactive than proactive, because when someone calls you to let you know that they are sick, what we always say, hey, I'm praying for you. And then we found out that the person died, and then now we clear our schedule so that we can show up for their funeral, when we could have been there when they were still alive. We could have been there and do something or find out what the need was so that we can actually save life, because every life is worth saving. So I was convinced that I had to move forward with that. The other side, the other vision that God has given me was to be able to start a clinic in the Congo.
And now we are looking at this project that is taking place in Kinshasa. And the purpose of this project is to provide a health environment, a medical clinic and a medical hospital that is available for people who just can't afford to pay for it. And so this is a project that is ground up. It's from the very basic up. It's a building that is being built just to house this equipment and these supplies, and to start a clinic that will be available to those who simply have to choose between eating and getting medical care. So our project and this shipment is to move a full 40-foot container filled with everything from anesthesia machines, hospital beds, down to basic supplies like gauze and bandages. And since it's a new place, we're also sending waiting room chairs and other furniture that you just have to have if you're going to run a hospital. In one particular instance that I remember that just really outlines not the special problem, because it's generalized, but it outlines the whole issue of lack of medical care. We were in a busy village, and the surgeon there had an appendectomy case that he needed to do. And the way they do the surgery there is that he opens a window so that he has light to actually see the area that he's working on. They slid a wooden table, just a regular dinner table, up against the window, and this surgeon performed an appendectomy that day on this patient. He saved the patient's life, but if you look at it from our standpoint, we'd say, oh, how could that be? But that's how it is, because the only person that had gloves to wear was the surgeon. And his gloves were exam gloves, not sterile gloves. And there was somebody holding a flashlight to give him better light. There was somebody who was shooing the flies away. And yet that patient lived and had a great recovery. And in fact, as I went through the recovery room for other patients he had done, on the very same table, using the same window, they were all doing well. These people are talented. The surgeon is quite talented, but he's using things that are not necessarily the most sterile and in the most sterile process. His choice is to let the patient die or to do the surgery. And so, of course, he elects to do the surgery. And that's the kind of environment there is. It's hard for us, coming from this environment where we have so many people and so much equipment, that it's hard for us to imagine. But what if your only choice was to use this scalpel you used on somebody else? You wipe it off with alcohol, pray, and you do your surgery. And that's what they're doing there. So Medical Ministries International just wants to bring more equipment so that they have better opportunity to provide better care.
I thought about what my mom did as one person going and visiting people that were sick and allowing them to come to our house so that she can not only share the gospel with them, but also impact them and help them physically to get better. And I thought if we had a building with all kinds of medical equipment and we were able to train the church in the Congo to serve in that capacity, how many more lives can we save? But then I got busy with my life. I graduated in 2007 as a mechanical engineer, and unfortunately in 2008 I lost my first job. 2009 I lost my second job, and I had the opportunity to come here in Fresno because a company found me online and they brought me here to work for them. But the bad thing about it is that I found myself in a city that I did not know anyone. So I knocked on several doors with my vision just to share. Listen, I want to start this mentoring program and I want to build a clinic in the Congo, but nobody was able to help me. Nobody was able to even give me the time. And so I felt discouraged and I felt like, why should I fight so hard to serve God if those that actually can help me choose not to do it because they're so busy living their life? So I decided to pursue the American dream. What is funny is we call it the American dream because you think that you got it until you found out that it was just a dream. And that's exactly what happened to me. We get a phone call from the Congo and we just found out that my mother-in-law was sick. And so we started sending all kinds of financial support to see if they can take her to any of the hospitals to find out what was wrong with her so that she can get the treatment she needed. But unfortunately, they couldn't find anything. Finally, they took her to a hospital, one of the only hospitals that had ultrasound capability, and that's where they were able to see that she had some kind of mass in her stomach. And so they called us and let us know that they found something and they will have surgery and that they needed money to do that. And so we connected with the family and sent the money so that they can have surgery. And just to find out again a couple months after that she got worse. And so we couldn't understand what was going on. We thought that this was over. And so I called my brother, who was a doctor, and I sent him to go visit my mother-in-law. And when he went there to talk to the doctors and to talk to the people that were taking care of the patient, he called me back and said she's not going to have long to live because she's having a hard time breathing. That means her lungs has been affected. Her eyes are turning yellow. That means her livers are not working perfectly. And her feet are swollen. That means her kidney are not working right. And if they removed a tumor, there is chances that that tumor was cancerous, that she has cancer. And if she has cancer, that means it's all spread in the body and she doesn't have long to live. And this was so painful for me because I realized that God has blessed me with this beautiful vision to build a clinic to save life. My mother-in-law was a pastor. She worked with several churches helping women's ministry in different churches. She served God her whole life, and yet we were not there able to save her just because they didn't have an ultrasound machine to figure out that she had cancer early and to be able to address it properly. And so I was determined to do whatever it takes to actually start this clinic. We reached out to MMI, Medical Ministry International, a great organization here in Fresno that has been already in the Congo 6 times. And they were willing to send a container full of medical equipment that worth close to $400,000 to $500,000. And so I sat down with some of my friends. We said, we have to build a building so that we can use this medical equipment there, train people to save life. Do you know that out of 7 kids, 1 kid usually dies or most likely dies in the Congo? Do you know that In some of the villages, it's actually 1 out of 2 kids that never makes it to the age of 5. Many women dies of childbirth complication because of lack of prenatal care. Do you know that dialysis is a commodity in the Congo? Because to have dialysis done, you gotta pay $5,000 cash up front, and most people can't afford that. And so we thought whatever it's gonna take to build this building, we'll borrow money to make it happen. It turns out that to build a building like that, it only cost us $160,000. But do you know that in this country we build building day in and day out, building that we don't need, building that we want for additional program, and it costs us millions every year, when only $160,000 can build a clinic that will save generations. This is the reason why we do what we do. This is the reason why we started United for the Future. Not only to provide mentoring here in Fresno and save lives of many kids that don't have role models so that they don't end up in jail or they don't end up dead in the street, but that we may also be able to build this clinic in the Congo and to be able to save life. And this is where you come in. This is where you can help us. Help us build this building. Help us give out of whatever we have. I remember my parents giving out of their poverty. I know we can do better. This is what made me who I am, and this is the reason why I call for you guys to come alongside and support this vision so that we can be able to save life, because every life is worth saving. God bless you.